Dark secrets beneath Frankfurt. Roman sanctuary may reveal rare human sacrifice rituals. A remarkable archaeological discovery beneath Frankfurt has unveiled what experts are calling one of the most significant Roman era sites ever found in Europe, one that may hold chilling evidence of ritual human sacrifice. Now we take a deeper look and break down this entire story on the AI
I want
podcast.
you to imagine something for a second. You are walking down the street in modern-day Frankfurt.
Right.
You're just passing by this totally normal, everyday school, the Romerstadtschule. You can hear heavy machinery, maybe some kids playing in the distance. It is just the absolute picture of the mundane, everyday world.
Just a totally average Tuesday.
Exactly. But what you don't know is that sitting perfectly preserved, literally just inches beneath those modern classrooms, is an ancient Roman settlement.
The settlement of Nida.
Yes, Nida, and specifically a vast subterranean sanctuary complex from the early 2nd century AD.
Which is, I mean, it's just incredible.
It really is. And for today's deep dive, we are pulling from some very recent, deeply fascinating archaeological sources to explore this exact site. Because as historians, people like Ina Hartwig are actually on the record calling this, quote, an archaeological discovery of almost unparalleled significance in Europe.
Yeah, and I have to say, that phrase, it carries immense weight in this field.
Unparalleled significance.
Right, because the archaeological community in Europe, I mean, they deal with Roman ruins constantly. It's not rare to find a Roman wall. So to call something unparalleled means it completely defies the established models we have for, how the Roman Empire operated in its northern provinces.
Which is exactly what we're going to unpack today. Our mission is to take you down into those excavations.
It's going to be a wild ride.
Oh, totally. We're going to look at the immense wealth hidden in this sort of underground cathedral. We'll look at the bizarre, completely unprecedented blend of cultures that built it.
And of course, the really unsettling stuff.
Right, the incredibly dark rituals, stuff that forces us to basically rethink the whole so-called civilized nature of the Roman Empire.
Yeah, but to really grasp the magnitude of those dark secrets, we first needed to establish the physical reality of the space, like the sheer scale.
Okay, set the scene for us.
Well, the scale and the preservation of this complex are exactly what allowed researchers to uncover these anomalies in the first place. You have to look at the timeline of the dig.
The initial excavations happened between, 2016 and 2018?
Right, exactly. And those were methodical. They were just sort of probing the edges of the site. But the really dramatic rediscovery of the main complex, that happened recently, in 2022.
Just accidentally, right, during the school's construction work.
Yeah, construction workers broke through the concrete and basically dropped into a 2,000-year-old crime scene. And what they found was a site that had remained astonishingly undisturbed for 2 millennia.
Which, just to pause on that, is crazy.
Hmm.
Surviving undisturbed in a densely populated European city like Frankfurt.
It's a statistical anomaly. I mean, usually these sites suffer from centuries of urban development. They get built over during the Middle Ages, or, their stones are looted to build other churches or houses.
Or will they just get obliterated by industrial-era foundations?
Exactly. So finding a site this intact is rare. It allows major institutions to really study the stratigraphy without interference. And we're talking heavy academic muscle here, like the German Research Foundation and the Swiss National Science Foundation.
Right, they don't just show up for a few broken pots.
No, they definitely don't.
I really want to visualize this complex for the listener because we aren't talking about a single ruined basement here.
Not at all.
The sources say it's 11 distinct stone buildings constructed over multiple phases of time. It's literally like finding a sprawling, multi-generational underground mall.
That's a great way to picture it.
A heavily fortified mall hiding just beneath the foundation of a high school.
And the central structures are just intricately mapped out. They're surrounded by around 70 shafts and, crucially, 10 specific pits that were designated for ritual depositions.
Okay, let's define that. Ritual depositions. Because we're talking about essentially sacred dumping grounds for offerings to the gods. But dumping ground feels a bit too chaotic, right?
Way too chaotic. These were highly formalized spaces. They were meticulously curated.
So not just a trash pit.
Right. A ritual shaft in this context is a conduit. The people of Nida were deliberately placing items deep into the earth to, communicate with or appease their deities.
Like sending a direct message underground.
Yeah, exactly. And when archaeologists began carefully excavating the layers of mud inside those 10 specific pits, they basically unlocked a pristine time capsule. It showed them exactly who was using this site.
And spoiler alert, The contents of those pits tell a story of extreme opulence.
Unbelievable wealth.
Let's look at the organic material first. The researchers found massive amounts of plant remains and animal bones, but specifically fish and birds.
Which is such a massive detail. It tells us quite a bit about the logistics and the ceremonial life of the sanctuary.
Because finding fish bones inland is a big deal, right?
Right. Finding a large concentration of fish and bird bones in this specific inland region points toward highly organized ceremonial banquets.
Because they had to bring the fish in from somewhere else.
Exactly. Feasting in honor of the gods was a cornerstone of ancient religious life. But importing specific types of fish or cultivating specific birds, that requires a really dedicated supply chain.
It's the ancient equivalent of like a high-end catering operation for a religious festival.
A very expensive one, yes.
But the food is really just the beginning. The sources detail an astonishing amount of architectural wealth pulled from these shafts. They didn't just find bare stone walls.
No, they found over 5,000 fragments of painted wall plaster.
5,000 fragments.
Yeah. Which indicates that this subterranean space was just ablaze with color. I mean, it requires hiring specialized artisan fresco painters to decorate the environment.
So we are looking at a highly sophisticated, brightly painted religious center.
Add to that the bronze fittings from doors and windows.
Right, the heavy hardware.
Exactly. You only use heavy, expensive, bronze architectural hardware if you are building something meant to be incredibly secure and, visually imposing.
And then there's the hard currency. The researchers recovered more than 250 Roman coins from the site.
Leaving currency is pretty standard practice in ancient sanctuaries, to be fair. It operates on the same psychological level as tossing a coin into a modern wishing well.
Just a small financial sacrifice.
Right, a minor donation meant to secure divine favor.
Okay, I buy the coins. A coin makes sense as a small donation. But here's where I'm super hung up. Because the sources mention a detail that completely stopped me in my tracks when I read it.
The jewelry.
Yes. Amidst the coins and the plaster, archaeologists found over 70 silver and bronze garment clasps. And many of them were completely intact.
The fibula.
Right, the fibulae. Why on earth are you leaving 70 intact, highly valuable silver and bronze clothing clasps? I mean, a broken pot makes sense as trash. A coin is pocket change.
Sure.
But a totally intact, beautifully crafted piece of silver jewelry, that is a massive personal financial loss.
It really is.
Were these people just dumping their wealth in a panic? Or is there, like, a functional reason to leave your expensive jewelry in a muddy pit?
That is a crucial observation. And no, they weren't just panic dumping. In the context of ancient Roman and provincial religions, leaving an intact, highly valuable personal item like a fibula, which is a garment clasp used to pin heavy cloaks together, is a profoundly intimate statement.
Intimate how?
Well, it goes far beyond tossing a coin. A fibula was worn close to the body. It literally held your garments and, by extension, your public identity together.
Oh, wow. I never thought of it like that.
Yeah, so in many ancient religious practices, offering a clasp symbolized a physical unbinding. You are shedding your mundane, everyday identity as you enter the sacred space.
You're leaving the outside world at the door.
Precisely. And you are leaving that valuable item to physically bind your prayer or your vow to the altar. Leaving 70 of them intact and crafted from precious metals signifies that the people using this sanctuary were deeply psychologically invested in the space.
Not just wealthy, but committed.
Very committed.
They were literally leaving a piece of themselves behind. It completely reframes how we have to view the settlement of Nida.
It does.
This wasn't some rustic, muddy frontier outpost where a few soldiers were huddling in the dark. This was a thriving, richly decorated cultural hub.
People of immense means were coming here.
Right, participating in opulent ceremonial meals, making intense personal sacrifices.
It was high society functioning on the edge of the empire.
Which makes the next finding from the sources so incredibly jarring. We have the painted walls, the bronze doors, the silver jewelry. But the wealth and the banquets are really just the prelude to the true anomaly found in these shafts.
Yeah, this is where it gets heavy.
This is the detail that has completely stunned researchers. And it's what prompted that unparalleled significance quote we talked about earlier.
We are talking about the darkest aspect of the site.
Right. The bombshell on the sources is that amidst all this high society wealth, archaeologists found the very real possibility of human sacrifice.
Yeah, and I really cannot overstate how disruptive this concept is to our traditional understanding of the Roman era, particularly in this specific region of the empire. areas like Germania or Gaul.
Wait, hold on. Let's unpack this. The Romans built their entire historical brand on being the ultimate, quote-unquote, civilized society.
Oh, absolutely.
If you read Julius Caesar, he literally justified conquering Gaul and slaughtering local populations by claiming the locals practiced human sacrifice.
He used it as pure propaganda.
Exactly. To prove they were morally superior. So you were telling me a wealthy, heavily Romanized site was caught doing the exact thing the empire used as justification for conquest.
It seems that way, yes.
How does a Roman site suddenly have evidence of the very practice they supposedly despised? Doesn't that completely break Roman law?
It absolutely breaks the theoretical Roman law, but to understand how this happened, we really have to look at the archaeological mechanics of the discovery.
Okay, take us through it.
When researchers investigate a ritual shaft, they pay close attention to the context of the remains. It isn't just about finding human bones, it's about how and where those bones are deposited.
Right, because finding a cemetery near a settlement is normal.
Exactly. But these weren't standard burials. The forensic and archaeological context is what makes researchers go pale.
What was the context?
The human remains were found commingled in the exact same ritual deposition layers as the animal offerings, the fish bones, and the silver clasps.
Oh, wow. So they were mixed right in with the offerings.
Yes. It strongly suggests these individuals were not given a standard burial. They were treated as part of the ritual offering itself.
They were placed in the pits exactly like the physical wealth. Like the fibulae.
Yeah, exactly like the wealth. And while researchers definitely add the necessary caveat that the evidence is still being meticulously analyzed, the context heavily hints at practices that just shatter our monolithic view of Roman civilization.
Because we're all taught the textbook version of Rome.
Right. Marble statues, orderly senates, strict laws enforced by polite administrators.
The aqueducts and the paved roads.
But the reality on the ground in the provinces was wildly different. The provinces were boundary zones. They were wild, unpredictable environments.
So the rules sort of bended at the edges.
Exactly. The discovery of potential human sacrifice at Nida proves that mainstream Roman practices could warp, mutate, and honestly succumb to deep hypocrisy when they hit the frontier.
Wow.
The official stance of Rome might have condemned human sacrifice, but heavily localized cults operating far from the capital developed their own extreme rules.
It is the ultimate hypocrisy. The empire outlaws a practice back home, but the wealthy elite and the military living on the bleeding edge of the frontier are secretly engaging in it underground.
It's a huge contradiction.
Which naturally demands an immediate explanation. If you find evidence of an extreme forbidden ritual in a place overflowing with silver, your immediate next question as an investigator has to be, whose altar was this blood spilled on?
You have to identify the gods. And the pantheon represented at Nida is staggering in its diversity. It really provides the key to understanding how such an extreme culture developed in the first place.
The sources list a mix of deities that sounds almost contradictory when you first hear it.
Very much so.
On one hand, you have the heavy hitters of traditional Roman state religion. You've got Jupiter, Diana, and Apollo, the absolute classic.
The standard operating system.
Right, but they're being worshipped right alongside deities like Jupiter Delicianus, Mercurius Eletheus, and Epona.
Those last three are the critical elements here. They represent a really complex web of local, provincial, and Eastern mythologies.
Break those down for us.
Sure. So Epona, for example, is a deeply revered goddess with Celtic roots. She's heavily associated with horses and the cavalry.
Makes sense for a frontier military zone.
Totally. And then Jupiter Delicianus is an Eastern mystery cult deity that became massively popular with the Roman military.
You know, we often hear analogies about cultural melting pots, but a better way to conceptualize what was happening at Nida is to think of Roman religion like open source software.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. Think about it. The Romans arrive, and they provide the base operating system, the grand temples, the structure of worshiping Jupiter or Mercury.
The core code.
Exactly. But the empire is vast. And the locals, the traveling merchants, the soldiers from other provinces, they are allowed to write their own custom code to make the religion function in their specific frontier environment.
That is a highly accurate framework. The academic term for that blending process is syncretism.
Syncretism, right.
It's the active merging of different religious beliefs, rituals, and deities. And what makes Nida completely unparalleled is the specific, localized nature of its syncretic blend.
Because they weren't just erasing the local gods.
Right. The Romans didn't force the locals to abandon their gods, they merged them. You take the Roman god Mercury and you fuse him with a local or Eastern concept, creating something entirely new.
Like Mercurius Aletheus.
Yes. And this specific blend at Nida is why the site has absolutely no known parallels in Roman regions like Germania or Gaul. The resulting cult was entirely unique to this one geographical point.
And we know this wasn't just a brief, temporary experiment either. We actually have a smoking gun that proves exactly how entrenched this customized religion was.
We do.
Archaeologists uncovered a specific dedication at the site left by a Roman soldier explicitly dedicated to Mercurius Aletheus.
The fact that it was left by a Roman soldier is vital.
Why is that the key?
Because it proves that the official military apparatus of the empire was directly participating in this localized, hybridized cult. It wasn't just some fringe group.
And the most incredible part of this dedication is the timestamp.
Oh, absolutely.
It is dated exactly to the year 246 AD.
Having a precise date of 246 AD gives us a firm anchor. It proves that this heavily blended cult, this wealthy sanctuary that potentially practiced incredibly dark, forbidden rituals, was highly active and supported by the Roman military well into the mid-3rd century.
So it was just an established institution functioning with total impunity.
Exactly.
So let's assemble the whole picture of Nida for the listener. We have a massive, undisturbed subterranean complex consisting of 11 stone buildings. We have extreme wealth, 5,000 pieces of brightly painted plaster, heavy bronze architecture, and intact silver fibulae left by deeply devoted worshippers.
We have the unprecedented, customized operating system of merged Roman and local gods.
And we have the terrifying forensic context suggesting these specific gods demanded rare, dark rituals that violated core Roman laws.
It was a culture operating entirely on its own intense spiritual frequency.
It really was. But history rarely lets something this extreme survive indefinitely.
No, it doesn't.
The story of Nida takes a sudden, sharp drop. Despite the extreme wealth, despite the heavy stone fortification and the clear military backing, this thriving subterranean center came to an abrupt end.
The archaeological evidence shows a hard stop.
Really, just out of nowhere.
Yeah, the sanctuary appears to have been suddenly abandoned around the years 275 to 280 AD.
Which is just a few decades after that Roman soldier left his dedication to Mercurius Aletheus in 246 AD.
The timeline is very tight. The ceremonial fires go out, the heavy bronze doors are shut, and the ritual shafts are just left to slowly fill with dirt.
Covering up those painted walls and silver clasps for the next 2,000 years.
Exactly.
But you can't just fade to black on the year 280 AD without looking at the broader historical pressure cooker of the Roman frontier at that exact moment.
Right, you have to look at the crisis of the 3rd century.
Which is just a brutal time.
The late 3rd century was a period of near-total collapse for the Roman Empire. The frontier wasn't just wild, it was actively fracturing.
What was happening specifically in the 270s?
During the 270s, you have massive, violent incursions by Germanic confederations, specifically the Alemanni. They were pushing aggressively into Roman territory, and the defensive lines in Germania were just buckling under the pressure.
Which introduces the ultimate lingering mystery of Nida. We know the site was abandoned right as this crisis peaked. But what was the actual catalyst?
That's the big question.
Did the broader Roman Empire, desperately trying to maintain order during a time of collapse, finally realize what was happening in this subterranean complex? Did they crack down on a rogue military cult that had just gone way too far with its dark rituals?
Or, conversely, did the worshippers simply run out of time?
Meaning the invaders got there first.
Right. Did the massive Alemanni raids finally breach the settlement, forcing this wealthy, devoted population to lock the doors to their sanctuary and flee for their lives?
Leaving all that silver behind in the mud.
Leaving it all behind.
The answer might still be buried down there in the dark, which honestly brings us right back to you, the listener.
Yeah, full circle.
Earlier, we asked you to picture walking past the Römerstadtschule in modern Frankfurt. The city official involved with the modern site, Marcus Gueschenberger, he emphasized this exact intersection of past and present.
It is a profound realization to understand the stratigraphy of human existence beneath our feet.
Truly, as you walk through your own city, going to work, grabbing a coffee, waiting for a bus, there are literally thousands of years of complex human history, just inches below the pavement.
It's easy to forget.
It is. There are empires that rose and fell, deeply held belief systems that mutated and merged, and incredibly dark secrets that the earth simply swallowed up. History isn't just a textbook. It is the actual foundation we are currently standing on.
The discoveries at Nida remind us that the ancient world was just as chaotic, wealthy, and profoundly strange as our own.
So the next time you walk past a construction site and you see the heavy machinery break through the modern concrete to expose the dirt below, take a second to look down.
Definitely.
Ask yourself,
Well,
what forgotten gods, what hoarded wealth, and what terrifying mysteries are still waiting to be unearthed right beneath your feet?
Okay, one question for you. How should modern society interpret and present findings like possible human sacrifice to the public without sensationalizing history, while still maintaining academic integrity and public interest in archaeology? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.